Hello and welcome to this screencast on timing. We're going to be looking at lesson planning and the timing, suggested timing for language and skills lessons. The key word for this screencast is suggested. You need to bear in mind that lessons while on the SATA course are 40-minute lessons, and therefore we are suggesting times for those 40 minutes. Now, let's start by looking at language focused lessons. And by language focused lessons we mean grammar, vocabulary, or functions. As we have said already, lessons usually start with a leading or warmer. They're followed by a pre-teaching vocabulary stage if necessary. This does not always happen, and this is very important. In this stage you would also only cover the meaning of those words that the students would need to understand in order to be able to answer the skimming and scanning tasks, or the reading, or the listening, or listening for gist, or listening for detailed tasks. Now, leading and warmer, usually 2 to 3 minutes. Then the pre-teaching vocabulary stage, if necessary, 2 to 3 minutes. Remember that the reason for pre-teaching vocabulary is that of removing potential blocks that students may have when answering the gist, the skimming for gist, or the listening for gist, and the scanning for detailed information or listening for detailed information tasks. And usually this would be between 3 and 5 words maximum. So 2 to 3 minutes is more than enough, especially when you are only establishing meaning and nothing else. Here you don't need to deal with meaning, form, and pronunciation, because you're only establishing meaning so that students can then approach the tasks. Then this is followed by a skim, reading, or listening for gist task, and can be between 2 and 4 minutes. Then we would have the guided discovery stage of the lesson, basically where you have the students exploring the text, which embeds the grammar, or embeds the vocabulary, or embeds the functions that you intend to teach. And this guided discovery stage then addresses meaning, form, pronunciation, and usage. This section of the lesson would take between 10 and 14 minutes. This would be followed by feedback and clarification, which is usually between 2 and 4 minutes, where you use all the CCQs, all the concept checking questions that you prepared for the lesson in your language analysis sheet, and through which you clarify the language and ensure that they have understood the target language and that they understand what the meaning, form, pronunciation, and usage of that target language is. Then they're ready to do some control practice for accuracy, so that we can see that they're using the language accurately. And that's, we suggest, between 5 and 7 minutes. This is followed by freer practice for fluency, and again around 5 minutes. This is a total of 38 to 40 minutes, which is basically the time that is given for every teaching practice lesson that you do on the course. TP1 is 20 minutes, TP2 to TP8 are 40 minutes each, and then TP9 is 40 minutes. Let's move on and let's look at skills focused lessons. So basically skills focused lessons where the focus of your lesson is either reading or listening. Again, we start with a leading and warmer that can be between 1 and 4 minutes. We pre-teach vocabulary if needed. As I said before, only those 3 to 5 words that would prevent otherwise the student from understanding and being able to answer the gist tasks, the skimming or scanning, or the listening for gist or listening for detailed information tasks. Again, we suggest around 5 minutes. Then skim reading or listening for gist, 5 to 7 minutes. Then Here in skills focused lessons, then we go ahead and explore the text in more detail, and then we have scan reading or listening for detailed information depending on whether you're doing reading or listening tasks. You may have one task where the students look for specific information. You may have two tasks, both looking for specific information or for detailed information, depending on the length of the text. Depending on what you're doing, you may have at least one, possibly two or three tasks. This obviously depends on the length of the text. You may have, if you have time and the text allows it and it is suitable for the text, you may have a drawing inferences task where students read between the lines, read the text, and then answer a drawing inferences question. And then you have a post skills or extension stage where you want them to react either in speaking or writing to the text, the content of the text that they've read or listened to. Again, here we have suggested 36 to 40 minutes. Moving on, you may also have skills focused lessons where obviously they have speaking, where the main aim of the lesson is speaking. Now, this is rarely going to happen on a SALTA course that you have one 40-minute lesson just on speaking, because usually the speaking element is integrated into the whole course and into the different stages of all the other lessons. However, should you have a speaking lesson, then again the first three stages would be the same. So you have a lead-in and warmer, pre-teach vocabulary if necessary, then skim reading or listening for gist of the text which you would be using to show a potential model of whatever it is, whatever aspect of speaking it is that you are using. Then you would have a preparation stage of around 5 minutes, task analysis stage of around 5 minutes where you look at the task and what it is that the students will then have to do. Then you would have a control practice stage where students are allowed to practice the speaking task, and then freer practice again 5 to 7 minutes. Finally, you would give them some feedback and clarification and opportunity for error correction here on what they said. And this could take up to 3 minutes for a total of between 36 and 40 minutes. Finally, if your lesson was a writing lesson, then again the first three stages would be the same. So you would have a lead-in and warmer to set the context and make them talk and about the context to warm them up. Then have pre-teaching vocabulary if necessary, those 3 to 5 items of vocabulary that would prevent otherwise the students from answering the gist and detailed information tasks, whether it is for reading or listening. Remember, here in the pre-teaching vocabulary, again, you would only focus on the meaning of those items. This would be followed by a skim reading or listening for gist task, and then you would have a 5 to 7 minute to analyze the genre of your writing lesson. So if it is an email that they're writing, so what makes an email an email? What are the distinct features of an email or of an informal letter or of a job application? This would be followed by a writing task where they actually write whatever it is that you analyzed or that the focus of your lessons. If it was an email, then they would write an email there. This is followed by a follow-up task where they react naturally to that writing task. So if it is an email, once we read it, we either call the person to thank them for the email or discuss the topic, or we write another email. If they wrote an application, then the natural reaction would be to then receive a reply to that application. This is followed by feedback and clarification, where you obviously give them focused feedback and clarify aspects of the use of and development of that skill that you notice when they were doing the writing task and the follow-up tasks. Again, this leads to a 36 to 40 minute lesson. So, just to conclude here, very, very important to remember that timing is important when you are delivering your lessons, but your students are even more important. And by this I mean that although you may have very good timing and apply the suggested times in your lesson plan, you should be responding to the students. These suggested timings are just guidelines to help you try and see how long different stages are. Obviously, if you were to teach longer lessons, then the timings would basically change accordingly. But the idea here is just to give you a guideline regarding the times for the different stages without forgetting that students come first. Timing is important, but students are number one. We're here for the students, you're here for the students, not for your lesson plan. And if you have to sacrifice a stage or your time doesn't add up, then we would obviously be discussing this in feedback and then looking at where things didn't go as expected, or whether the timing was off because you were responding to the students, in which case would be acceptable. So I hope these guidelines are useful, and I look forward to working with you in your lesson planning.